Welcome. So, been a little adventuring over the last week or two, have you?
Yeah.
So, what's the story?
Um, so did I tell you I went to St. Louis to see a show?
Yep, the
Tropical
tropical.
Fuck Storm.
Yeah.
Um, and then I had to go up to Chicago to deal with an issue I was having with one of my Macintosh amplifiers. And living where I do, there's no sort of high-end hi-fi outfit that can service such things. So when something like that happens, I have to drive up to Chicago or maybe St. Louis. Those are about the closest places. And so I did that, and it basically entails just driving up there, dropping it off, and then coming back, driving up there again to pick it up, and then coming back. And tomorrow I'm going yet again because I've got an issue with another amplifier that I have to drop off. And this time I'm going to stay up there for a couple days and just sort of fuck around for a couple days. Chicago's fun to fuck around in.
At some point, you might just need a small studio apartment there.
I've thought about it
Yeah.
actually. I have thought about it there or St. Louis. St. Louis would be a much more affordable option. Because I like both of those cities. I really like spending time there, even though I don't know anybody in either of them. When I go there, I really enjoy them, and especially living in a place like the place I live now, which it just has nothing that a city has to offer.
Right.
And I miss that stuff sometimes, a
One
lot
of
of
the
times.
One of the cool things about when I was big into Firewater, was I mentioned before we had the Firewater Circus. All the fans were sort of part
Hmm.
of this whole community. And so if Firewater was playing in Chicago or whatever, and you went to Chicago to see them play, you could have a place to stay. Like people would just put you up, and
Huh.
which is very cool.
It
And
was a
so
real community.
yeah, so I put up people in Boston a couple times, who were, coming to see Firewater play, and who I didn't know, but I knew through, their postings on, on the whatever it was,
Back then, it was a bulletin board.
yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know what the term was. Yeah, so something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool. And it is such a great way to meet people. It's just through similar interests, really specialized interests like that. That's a band that not
right. That's my
everybody and their
point.
dog knows
Yes.
about,
Yeah. And
and
because
so
like if you're a Rolling Stones fan, okay, well that's,
yeah,
a
yeah, no,
bazillion
no
people.
shit, Sherlock.
Yeah. But if you're a Sushi Robo fan,
Yeah,
then it's a
yeah,
more niche,
yes,
So
yes.
and it's
Both of them are in that little niche.
and it says something about you, in particular, like in particular a band
Yeah,
like Firewater, So so I like that. Then I was thinking it's so funny how, when you think back to the days of the Who and the Stones, in particular the Stones and the Beatles, but in Dylan, okay? The big thing was when is the next album coming out? This huge demand for what are the Beatles going to do next? What are the Stones going to do next? What's Dylan going to do next?
yeah.
And although
Th
you and I,
those were like cultural, events
yeah,
back then. They really
it,
were.
in the way that we don't have that experience. We've never had. I mean, I've looked forward to the next Springsteen album or the next Clash album or whatever, but not in that sort of way.
Well, yeah, I guess in our formative years, it was, I would say, is the tail end of that
Yeah,
era. For
yeah,
example, when a new REM record was coming out, at least in my circles, that was a big deal. When a new, early on, when a new U2 record was coming out, maybe it didn't have quite the cultural significance of, say, a Beatles record. Well, it didn't, but nothing did.
right.
But still that was still in place a little bit as opposed to now where since the whole industry is so
Yeah,
fractured,
it's
you don't get
completely different.
that.
But like with the Beatles, it's also even like the Beatles just releases. What are the Stones going to do? When in regard to the Beatles, like
How are they going to top them?
yeah, almost like a Yankees Red Sox. I mean, it's sort of fascinating that that's never happened since. In that sort of regard. I never waited for the next U2 album.
Oh, I sure
After
did.
Boy, I don't think they made a good album. So
Huh. I
I don't dislike like I like various songs that they did,
mhm.
but like stuff like War. I just got tired of it. War was played so much. And Joshua Tree, I think is one of the most overrated albums I've ever heard in my life. So
Mm.
That's right up there
Well,
with
yeah,
Dark Side.
they got played a lot, but I mean that inevitably happens with almost every great classic record for the most part. You know, the records we would consider classics, yeah, they get played to death. And back then it was different because radio still had some significance.
Yeah, a lot. I just always found you two, I don't know, a little pompous.
Total, yeah,
Yeah,
totally, especially later on as they
yeah.
got huge. But early on, the whole vibe and dynamic around that band was different, and it seemed like they were real troubadours and carrying on the tradition of like, you know, rock and roll and the truth, and you know, they just seemed really important. Along with that came like a huge dose of self-importance for sure. But I think for a while there they actually delivered what they claimed to be delivering, I think.
I mean, I liked Boy and I liked October. I just after that, and I liked War originally, initially. Okay, but I quickly, I'll say this is where, like for me, the Alarm, they filled in that the Alarm for me were you two without all the bullshit.
That's an interesting comparison because uh, I would say the Alarm were basically poor man's U2 and total imposters compared to U2.
The Alarm were great. I love the Alarm. I saw them.
I liked them too.
Yeah. So
Again for their first
yeah,
couple records,
yeah,
but they quickly just hit the skids and put out, you know, after their first record, really their first EP, their records were pretty awful.
and
If go back and listen to them, like I don't know,
and
I forget the names of them,
I
but
was gonna say I don't remember the names, but I remember 68 Guns and Where Were You Hiding When the Storm Broke and The Stand, and I think they were just on the first album or two.
it was their first EP and their first album,
Yeah,
and then after that, they put out a record which was like the classic example of oh, okay, big label gets involved, money
yeah,
gets involved, the total sellout, like you know, like Annie Leibovitz photos on the cover, that sort of thing, where it's just really slick looking, the
yeah.
music is really slick, and they completely lost their edge.
And I don't remember, but I certainly believe you.
Oh, I do.
I think one of the problems is also not even just the big label getting involved. I think you work and you write and to get that first album, and you finally put all your best stuff in that first album, and now it's 6 months or a year later, and now you got to put out a second album. And I think like that's why a lot of second albums are crap, and then the third album is actually okay again because now you've had time and you've woodshedded and you've toured and all. And so I think I think if you look back, a lot of bands struggled with that second album.
What would be an example of a band who fell into that where their second album sucked and the third record got
It,
them going again
it,
after the first record was a near classic? Maybe the
and
Clash.
Yeah, and I was gonna say the Talking Heads, and again, it was the second album did not suck. It was a good album, but the third album is so much better than the second album. Springsteen, Born to Run is much better than the Wildly Innocent. I think when you're rushed to put out, a second album, and that's why he took so long after that. That and the lawsuits going on and all, of course, but he took forever in between albums. It's so crazy. The Beatles used to have to put out albums every 6 months. Like,
Everyone did back then.
yeah.
You look at the discographies from some of the great classic bands, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, another year of three full-length records
Yeah.
that are all classics.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, well, and that's the funny thing is though the early Beatles stuff and Stone stuff, a lot of filler on the albums.
yeah,
Very, very
those
early.
all basically suck, in my
And,
opinion.
and so it's funny because when you put out an album, you always say you play the album all the way through. You're like you don't skip songs. So I couldn't imagine you play those early albums too often.
I don't,
Yeah.
and I of course know them all and have them all, but I would say the Beatles didn't really capture my attention. The Beatles' first really great classic record has to be Rubber Soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Stones' first really great classic record has to be Aftermath.
That's what I was gonna say. Yep, I agree.
And there's a smattering of
Yeah.
great
Songs.
songs
Yep.
before
Yep.
those records came out,
Yeah.
but you can't. when are you going to pull out like, oh, I'm going to go home tonight and listen to Please Please Me? You
Yeah.
know, no, who the fuck does
Yeah.
that in this day
No,
and
as
age?
a matter of fact, you did that when you bought the 45. Like, oh, like the new Beatles new 45, and then you just played it over and over and over,
Well,
Um,
you're not that old,
no,
and
no, that
neither
was
am
not,
I.
no, that was not me, but it would have been me.
Yeah, sure, sure.
I certainly did that with singles later on. But it's interesting also though that like it's when you look at the Stones and Dylan in particular, though, the run of albums, like the 3 or 4 albums in a row, like Dylan with Bringing It All Back Home and Highway 61 Revisited and Blonde on Blonde, it's like holy fuck, how do you release those 3 albums in a row? It's
And
crazy.
even on top, even in the front end and the back end of those
Yeah,
records, another side of Bob Dylan.
yep.
And then after Highway 6 or after Blonde on Blonde,
Was
which is my favorite Dylan record of all time, is
it's my
John Wesley
favorite.
Harding.
Okay, and then Nashville Skyline.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's great too.
you
But
know, and they're great albums. They're just not as good as those other three. I mean, they're still great albums in my mind. Okay, but it's just incredible that like that is just a run of like and the Stones that we talked about before with Let
yeah,
It Bleed and Exile and Sticky Fingers and all. It's just crazy.
the
And
Beach
Beggars
Boys,
Banquet. Yeah.
Beach Boys had a run like that. Um, and one band who never gets the credit I think they deserve, who maybe is the best one out of all of them, is the Kinks.
And the Kinks definitely never had. They never, as a matter of fact, there's not one album they released that's considered a classic in that stands up against those.
I'd have to disagree with that for
I'm
sure.
I'm not saying your opinion. I'm saying popular opinion. I'm saying
Boy, I
rock.
even
Grit,
even
grit.
e- even even that. I mean, records like Something Else by the Kinks,
Yep.
Face to Face, Arthur, Village Green Preservation Society, Lola. I would say all of those. I maybe not to the same degree,
That's what I'm
of
saying.
course not,
That's all I'm saying.
but
Yeah.
hardened loser rock fans like
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
just their life was so focused on being a music fan. Hardcore people, I think, would hold those Kinks records in the same regard as the other ones we were talking about.
And I mean, it's so taste is subjective, so it's hard to do
Totally,
this.
totally.
But like for me, it would be, and for a lot of people, it would be the Beatles here, and for me, it would be more, the Stones, not counting Dylan, just talking rock and roll, the Stones, and then the Who, and then the Beatles, and then whoever, and the Kinks would be in the top 10, like just in my pyramid, but not in the top 5 even.
I guess that would be for most people actually.
That's what all I'm saying. And so,
Um,
you
so
know.
you don't consider Dylan rock and roll?
I mean, it's bands. I'm like bands versus artists.
Oh, okay, versus
So
like the
yeah,
single artist. Yeah,
yeah,
I
that's
see.
all. And no, and that's the funny also thing about like Dylan, like, oh my God, he's gone electric, Judas, or always change his voice, for the way he sings on Nashville Skyline and all,
Yeah.
and this attitude of like people flipping out, in a way that never happened in our lifetime of artists. I mean, there was definitely like the Clash got a lot of blowback for selling out, but that was in England, you know. I never saw anything like that.
There would be some rumblings about something more superficial, like somebody's haircut or what they were
Yeah,
wearing. Like when
yeah,
Bono got a mullet for the
yeah,
Unforgettable Fire
yeah,
tour, that
yeah,
that had people all a buzz.
yeah,
Something totally frivolous like
yeah.
that. Um,
But
the music was still great, though. I got to say. I mean, that would be another one of those records of theirs that I think just holds up against any music from that era, any rock music from that era.
for me, one of the things is, was I dying to see a band live? And I saw U2 for Boy and really enjoyed it. And I saw them once more, I think for War. I can't remember which tour it was. And then after that, I was like, oh, Mysterious Ways. I like that song. Or, oh, this, I like that. But then, oh, like, Where the Streets Have No Name, Still Haven't Found What You're Looking For. I'm like, oh, it's so tedious. And I like the last thing I want to do is go see that in concert. And so if I didn't want to see them in concert, that really brought him
When
down.
when you saw them on the Boy Tour,
Yeah.
where did they play in Boston?
Metro, which was there were two clubs. Spit was a smaller club, and Metro was the larger club. But even Metro only held 500 people. It
Hmm.
was not. The Rat, where REM first played, that held like 100 people. And that was really small. And that's why you see the pictures of REM, and that people are like on top of them on the stage because there was
Hmm.
no room in the Rat, none. So, and the Metro was great. And so my brother's best friend John worked the door at the Metro. So not only could I get in free, which was great, but that wasn't the important thing. I could get in. I was underage.
Uh,
And so
yeah.
that's where like saw all those bands. And that's where I've mentioned before, I think that I hung out with the Vapors after their show. And I was a huge Vapors fan. My dad brought the album home for me from England, and I
Uh-huh.
was like a major Vapors fan. So it was cool to like hang out with them. And they were all nice guys. And I think even they knew their moment was their window was going to be brief.
That
So
was probably around the time of the Turning Japanese
yeah, yeah,
single.
yeah. And that was on their first album. The first album's good. I like it. I like their second album
Really
even.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Magnets.
yeah,
Those are both really good
yeah,
pop records from
yeah.
that era. In fact, was just recently reading about a new record they just put out,
Wow. I
like
had
within the
no
last,
idea.
yeah,
Okay.
within the last year or so. It seems like inevitably every goddamn band who ever had any sort of commercial success, no matter when they broke up in the 80s or the 90s and how long they were dormant, they will come back.
So
They will
you
come back.
so
And that's a perfect example of that.
I can look forward to the next Jesus Jones and Tommy Two Tone albums.
Probably, although Tommy Two Tone might be dead, but
Yeah.
or no, I'm thinking of Greg Kinn. He
Yeah, he
died.
is dead. Yeah.
But yeah, I bet if you looked online, you could find Jesus Jones, and they're probably still playing. Like,
Oh, the Vapors are still playing. I knew they were playing but
yeah,
I didn't think they were actually recording it as well.
yeah, they've got a
Yeah.
record, and what I read about it was glowing, like
Wow.
just saying how great of a rock record it was. Do you remember a band called The Only Ones?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Because they had a great single.
Another Girl from Another Planet was
Yeah, Another
their
Girl, Another Planet. Yeah. That's a
their
great song. Yeah.
and that's always pointed at as one of the great singles from that era for sure.
It's
And
awesome.
I just picked up a record by Peter Parrott, who is the front man of that band and a longtime junkie and one of those guys who you just didn't hear from for decades. And he's put out a couple records over the last few years. I haven't listened to it yet, but it's supposed to be great. Like the things I've read about it make me believe that I'm going to really like this record. I haven't listened to it yet, like I said, but it'll be interesting to see. And that's another example of, they don't stay gone forever. And maybe maybe I'll do some research and bring up all of these somewhat obscure bands
Yeah.
that fall into that category, and 99.9% of them are back together or have been back together within the last 5 years and have toured with
Right.
maybe like one original member, or like
See,
maybe
that's the
they're
thing.
the
Yeah.
original accountant for the band. It's still
Yeah.
the only original guy, but
And that's so the Doobie,
inevitably,
and that's like the Doobie Brothers and Foreigner and Chicago and Styx and all those bands, certainly.
yes.
And now at this era, it's probably is all the 80s and 90s bands too.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And
So so it's
maybe
not the
they're
same
playing.
same
Uh,
line for Chumbawamba.
I'm sure there is some version of Chumbawamba out there. And the English bands, I don't know if in England or Europe in general has like the equivalent of like these
Of
county
that.
fairs that a band like Kansas would be
They
playing,
do. They do.
or,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
REO Speedwagon
Yeah.
and shit like that. Okay,
So
so
English beat is plays those sort of, so
there's that old fart circuit,
yeah, yeah,
that's at a fair. They do have those in England,
yeah.
like county fairs.
Yeah, and pubs, where people like that play. Kim saw I think it was just the lead singer from Modern English at this tiny bar in Ann Arbor.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
I could go on allmusic.com right now, and I'll bet you anything Modern English has put out a record within the last 3 years,
That's so funny.
after like 25 years
In
of
between,
nothing.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you can't blame them.
oh
If
no.
if you could make a living
Yeah,
doing music,
yeah,
why the hell would you not, do that instead of
yeah.
having some shitty corporate gig?
But it is weird. Like my sister's actually going to go see Peter Noon.
That's
Herman's
an,
Hermits.
an
Uh,
ultra example of what we're
yeah,
talking about
and it must like, and he's been doing these things for what? How many years?
for probably 50
Yeah,
at least
it must be weird.
for him or the crowd.
Like for him in particular, I think. It's like the song Garden Party.
Mm, just a second.
Yeah.
Do I know what song?
And there he is, Ricky Nelson.
I just
Uh,
picked this up like a week ago. So
I,
funny that you would mention it.
and Garden Party is a great song, but he talks about how the song talks about them basically getting booed because they didn't look like they used to look. He had long hair, like and a mustache and everything. He wasn't Ricky Nelson,
Right,
and
right.
so it's just funny. And actually, I like his early stuff too. I like Hello Mary Lou, Fools Rush In. So uh,
The legend behind how he died. Do
no,
you, do you know the story?
mm-mm.
I'm only bringing it up because the story has been debunked on what I read recently.
Okay.
The story was that he was flying from a gig to another gig in a
Oh, this
small
sounds familiar.
plane,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and the legend always went that they were freebasing he and whoever else was on the
Right.
plane with
Yeah.
him, band members, people involved in his band, I think maybe his wife at the time. Um, uh, no, no, his wife wasn't there. But anyway, supposedly they were freebasing on the airplane and it caught the plane on fire and the plane crashed and everybody was killed. But what I read recently, because when I picked up this record, I did some research on it and him, and that was all bullshit. They weren't freebasing cocaine.
Yeah.
It was some small fire in the cockpit that
Yeah.
they couldn't extinguish, and it took the plane down. But supposedly he was not like a cokehead, and they weren't freebasing coke. It was just one of those weird uh, what do you call those? Not not old wives' tales, but um,
Yeah, like urban myths. Yeah.
urban myths, like
Yeah.
Mikey with mixing Mikey from Life Cereal mixing Pop Rocks with Pepsi and dying, that sort of thing, that
Yeah.
sort of urban legend.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was just interesting because I always thought that was, it's one of those things that for whatever reason that story gets out there, like Rod Stewart having his stomach pumped after
Pumped.
a
Yeah.
concert, like
Yeah.
8 ounces of semen came
Yeah.
out of his
Yeah.
stomach.
I
And
remember that one.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're our age, of course you
Yeah.
heard that,
Yeah.
and it's weird how those things could just become fact,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, especially back then, because there was no internet, there was no, not that everything on the internet is fact by any means, but at least there was a way to cross-check some things.
Yeah,
Now wasn't at all then.
uh,
If your buddy in high school
totally.
told you that, you just believed it.
Yeah, yeah, and it was so sensationalistic. You wanted to believe that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. Anything like that, it just kind of blew your mind. Another one would be Alice Cooper and the chicken.
yeah, or
Do you
Ozzy.
know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, or Ozzy supposedly biting off the head of a
yeah,
bat
yep, yep.
during
I
a
remember that
show.
one. Yep.
Um, Alice Cooper supposedly, what was the story? At a show, he bit off the head of a chicken or something, and that wasn't true at all. It was
No.
basic. I mean, what happened was pretty nasty, nonetheless. Somebody threw a chicken up on stage, and then he threw the chicken out to the audience, and the audience tore the chicken to pieces.
That never happened in one of your gigs.
No, it did not. I'm happy to report. That's just nasty.
And were you ever nervous when you'd be flying on small planes between all your gigs?
I'm nervous on any plane at any time.
I mean, would that have been a problem for you?
Um, yeah, it would have, but it wouldn't have stopped me
You're
from
still yeah,
continuing on. That's for sure. I don't think it would have. Oh, that's another one.
yeah,
Gene Clark, when he quit the Byrds,
yeah,
the urban myth was that he had such a intense fear of flying that he quit the Byrds, and this was during their heyday when they're having their biggest hits,
yeah.
like in 1966 or whenever. And I was just reading something about him recently, and that wasn't the case at all. He was just tired of doing the Byrds music. He wanted to do his own thing, essentially. So
And they
they
were frustrated with him as well. There was like band dynamics going on there. But that was I remember
and
that was a story because
yes,
a bird doesn't want to fly.
yeah,
They made a
yeah.
big deal about that.
Boy,
So
isn't that ironic?
yeah.
Alanis Morissette. So yeah, it's just interesting how stuff like that can really take hold. Now, I guess it's kind of the same today in a way. Although stuff comes at us so much more fast and furiously that it's forgotten in 2 days.
Oh
Whereas stuff like, the Rick Nelson urban
yeah.
legend or Alice or whatever, those ones, hang around forever. And especially the Mikey and the Pop Rocks
Yeah.
one. I mean, you talk to anybody around our age, if you ask them, how did Mikey from the Life cereal commercial die, they're going to say, "Oh, he died. Didn't he
Yeah.
die by ingesting too many Pop Rocks and Pepsi?"
Yeah.
And it's so funny.
But and now also I will say because I'm like removed from music, I still love music, but it doesn't like consume me the way it did growing up. That when stories come out about whoever, I'm like, all right, whatever, I don't care. Like I
Yeah,
hear it and it just goes right through me like water.
doesn't
It-
have
like the
nearly the
impact,
same
yeah,
importance.
yeah, that it
Yeah,
would have had, you know. But it's funny though with like the band like the Vapors, because again, I think the Vapors knew their window was going to be short. I think the Knack knew their window was going to be short. And I wonder how many bands know or like have Ringo always talked about how, he always thought the Beatles would have like two albums out. And
yeah.
then he was hoping to get enough money to open women's hair salons, like a chain of women's hair salons is what he wanted to do. Because, because
That's so great.
because the idea like they were going to be like, releasing as many albums as they did and staying together for as long as they did. And ironically enough, they didn't even stay together that long. The Stones are still together, So, but I wonder how many bands who are at the top are like, oh my God, we're at the top and we're going to be at the top forever. Versus we're at the top, we're lucky to be here. How long can we ride this thing out?
Well,
Or even
hindsight.
or bands like it's a matter of time before the top. We know we're going to the top. It's just a question of when.
Huh. Hindsight, of course, is always 2020.
Yeah.
I would guess that when you are ascending that ladder that quickly and you're at the top of the heap, that is so all-consuming and it feels so amazing and so different and just so incredible that you're not even really thinking about, is this going to last? You're just so consumed by it in the present that you probably don't even think about it. It'd be interesting to yeah. I mean, I guess we hear people talk about it plenty, and I don't know. I guess other than Ringo, now that you mentioned it, I can't think of anybody else who's really addressed that. Like, oh, we thought we'd be a flash in the pan and we'd be working day jobs in a year and a half.
Well, in a similar, I don't know if you read what Scotty Scheffler said the other day, but he was talking about a golfer for all you people who don't know who he is, pro golfer, top of the golfing world. And he was talking about how winning doesn't really mean that much. That he's like questions, what's the point? Like he'll win at like some big tournament, which he's dreamed of winning all his life. And then he says, and it's great for like 2 minutes. Then he goes out for dinner with his family and goes to bed. And now he's on to the next tournament.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I certainly don't think all athletes feel that way by any means, but I think a lot do. And I think, and you look at it's one thing for the Vapors or the Knack or whatever bands I liked, but you could tell they were going to have short-lived careers and all. But as opposed to a band like Creedence Clearwater, who fucking rocketed up like, the charts, be dominated for like, and then disappeared basically, you know? And so, whereas you would have thought, oh my God, like, this guy can like just like, wake up in the morning and write a hit song like that. They'll be dominating the entire 70s. Like they will never stop.
Yeah. Um, I think the main difference between a band like that and some of the other ones we're talking about is the quality of the
Yeah,
songwriting. I
yeah,
mean, that's what sets a Creedence apart
no question. Yep,
from the Knack.
yep.
I like the Knack. The Knack are fine. They're
Yeah, yeah.
even their second and third records are okay.
I'm not comparing the two bands except for the point of like longevity,
Yeah.
like there's no, and so again, if you listen to like, Who'll Stop the Rain in particular, something like that, you're like, oh my God, like this band really has impact, or Fortunate Son, you know?
Well, you can pick any Creedence song
Yeah.
out of a hat, and it's going to be one of the greatest rock songs from that era, or
And
any era for that
and when were
matter.
they done? Were they done by what, 72?
Yeah, and that was all internal
Yeah.
issues,
But I mean,
of course.
it's really 68 to 72. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, they were selling more records during their heyday than anybody on the
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah.
Anybody, absolutely anybody. And what's kind of weird? They never had a number one
Yep.
single.
They had more number
Isn't that
twos than
strange?
anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, but from that period that you're talking about, actually, I
Yeah.
think it was like 69 to 70,
Yeah.
a 2 year period. They had
Yeah.
about four albums and about 5 to 10 top five singles,
Yeah.
and there was nobody on fire like them
And,
at that point. And
and
the quality was, without peer.
yeah. And if I'd said to you, dude, they're gonna be done in a couple of years, you would have said there is no fucking way,
That's right.
you know?
Especially, uh, seemingly grounded, down to earth,
Yeah.
four dudes from El Cerrito, California,
Yeah,
who
these were not like,
no,
in the
they
newspaper for like, crashing, cars and like, overdosing and shit like that.
they weren't
So,
out bird dogging chicks and banging beaver and doing 8 balls of coke.
yeah.
At least according to what I've read, they
Right.
weren't.
And so if you had thought they were going to end, it would have been unfortunate, like an accident, like a plane crash or something like that. And the truth was, it was just like they were like, "Fuck, we're tired of you, dude." And it's just, and then even if you told me that, even if you said the band is going to implode because they just don't want to deal with him anymore, you would have thought, okay, his solo albums, they're going to dominate the rock market. And they didn't until 1982 or
You're
83
talking
or
about center
center
field.
field. Yeah.
Well, what happened though was,
I know there's the
he,
lawsuit. Yeah.
yeah, there was a big lawsuit. He put out right after Creedence broke up. He put out a record called "The Blue Ridge Rangers," where he played everything on it, and it's a straight up country record. And because of that, it didn't really sell. And
Right.
then about a year after that, he put out a self-titled record, which was more Creedence-like, and that had a couple minor hits on it. That was like 74 or something. And then he went that whole period until center field 82 or 83 or whenever that was, not putting out anything,
Yeah.
not writing any music, or not releasing any music.
Yeah.
So really interesting trajectory.
Because you would have
It's
thought again, if they break up, he as a solo artist will be,
he,
like Rod Stewart, like, just like dominating the charts.
yeah, and he certainly could have been, I think, if he wanted to,
Yeah.
and if his head was straight, but he was so because he lost the rights to his own
Yeah.
songs to
Because
Sal Zans.
the bandmates sold it. He was pissed. Yeah. So
So yeah. Anyway, I forget exactly
yeah.
where we started with this
But
topic.
it just like when like if you're gonna last, not gonna
Oh
last,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like Jim Morrison after Janis and Jimmy died, he used to answer his phone by saying, "You're drinking with number three."
yeah.
There was a guy who knew he was not going to be around a lot longer.
That's so. I wonder if that's one of those urban legends,
Yeah, I don't
or
know. Yep.
you know.
But it's something you could certainly see him say. Like,
Well, it makes for a great
yeah,
quote in those circumstances, and especially considering that he was number three, dying at
yeah.
27.
And the crazy thing about the Doors, consider how short their lifespan was they immediately hit it, and then they were riding the top, and then they sort of crashed, and then they had a comeback, and they were in some ways a lot even better than they were before, and then it ended.
Well, and it did keep going for a couple
Yeah,
of
yeah.
records
We won't
after.
talk about the inner circle or the circle of light or
No,
whatever the fuck that
no,
was called.
there was two Doors records after
Full
Jim
circle, yeah,
Morrison died, Full Circle and
yeah,
Other Voices,
yeah, yeah.
and
So
they're interesting to listen to.
I
I
bet.
will say that much. It's not like the Doors weren't great, aside from Jim Morrison. And I'm not saying those are great records, but
Right.
you break it down, and you know, they're they're great musicians and unique musicians if you look
Yeah,
at the three of them.
yeah.
So it's too bad. It's just that Morrison was such a dominant creative force within the band, as good as the other three were.
It's weird. Yeah,
Yeah, what a weird dynamic.
which is the opposite of the Who.
And
Like like Daltrey's great and all, but you don't think of like the band isn't Daltrey. Like
oh,
you almost think of
well,
him last.
it would be Townsend, who would be the
Yeah,
Morrison,
yeah,
where you couldn't, no matter what, you could not
yeah,
carry on with the Who.
yeah.
Although, let's see what happens. Let's see if Townsend dies first. Let's see what Daltrey does. But I mean, eventually they're just literally going to be too goddamn old to even,
Yeah.
climb onto a
I need
stage.
help. Yeah. So you didn't go to England for Ozzy's final show? Uh,
No,
eh,
no. I've never been a big Ozzy guy. I don't. I think
yeah,
Ozzy sucks. In
yeah.
fact, all of that solo stuff is just shitty to me,
I'm
anyway.
not even much of a Black Sabbath fan. So, and if you're not a Sabbath fan, you're probably not going to be an Ozzy fan. So,
No, no. I am a Sabbath fan, but certainly not a huge one. But Ozzy, ugh, I've
yeah.
never understood. How he was anointed as such as an all-time great. I guess from his the Sabbath years, I guess. Although that solo stuff was always really popular back in the day.
I don't understand, and I saw it Motorhead in concert, and they're fine. I don't understand the worship for Lemmy.
Yeah, kind of the same
Yeah,
thing.
you talked about it, for the Pogues. You talked before about Shane
Uh-huh.
McGowan.
Yeah, like just
Certain, you
kind of
know,
a fuck up,
yeah.
and who, yeah,
It
yeah.
usually happens with people who are already gone, like Graham Parsons, Scott Walker. It's the people who are already gone, they're anointed. They become larger than life after they die.
Um,
So hopefully that can happen for you.
Whatever.
Man, he was a great drummer. He was so fucking underrated. Go back and listen to all those Ambitions albums. You'll
It was
hear it. So,
it was all those. It was that goddamn addiction to Advil that finally took him out.
like I said, I've talked before about the alcohol and the drugs that would be my downfall. The women as well. Like if I was in a successful band, I mean, I would
But
have been ripe for BD. So,
you would, your penis would have fallen off by
yes,
the third
yeah,
tour.
yeah. Like I said, well, we don't know why he can't come, and it's for either this reason or that reason. So,
Um,
um,
I got to mention this documentary series that I'm watching right now. That's pretty damn good, and I don't know how it got under my radar or was never on my radar because it's from a couple years ago. It's called 1971, the year that music changed
uh,
the world.
yeah, I've
Have
seen
you seen
that
it?
because they have a few different years. It's pretty cool. There's one for 1970 as well.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
It's like eight parts
yeah, I've seen it. It was very
on
cool.
Apple TV.
Because I don't remember what it was, but they do go over the Black Panthers,
Yeah, so this is different. There must be another one
okay,
because this is different. I think the one you're talking about was a CNN production.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, this was done by Apple TV, which blows chunks 99%